Good morning, all. It's a pleasure to be back, and today it's Andrea and I once again talking about something that is a very important topic, but something which has been flagged by you, the audience. Everyone has said, look, succession planning is so important. We'd love to hear your thoughts. So succession planning it is, and we're delighted to be here. And I find it quite astonishing, Andrea, that people don't think about this until it's too late. And it's almost that human nature thing of being lazy, disorganized. It doesn't matter how efficient you are as a human being. Certain things will always be put on the back burner. And sadly, this is one that comes up a lot. And I've got a few examples, you've got a few examples, but what are your thoughts? Succession planning and...
I mean, for me, it's a topic which it is very important. It's something that I always, every day, I think about myself, literally every day. It's something that for me, it is key in my life, personally. And I do think the topic itself is scary, because obviously it requires you to die. It is the reality of fact. That's the reason. Because, I've been thinking, how much time do I spend in planning my next running shoes, my next tennis racket, whatever it is that I use on a day by day for sports, for example. And I took those, I analyzed the best materials and the best everything, and how little usually people think about succession is proportion, is disproportion.
Yeah, I think it's a fear factor, but also it's almost that mindset of it's never going to happen to me, even though something will happen. As you said, it's inevitable.
Taxes and that, you can't escape.
You can't avoid them, exactly. And it's almost a case of what happens when an event such as incapacity or death occurs. And, I've seen it off the back of just last year, this time last year, and it was someone who was working, we were working very closely with him. He was a very senior person in his institution. I'd rather not name him, but I think that he was a partner in terms of their firm with ours, and also he was a very good friend, a very good family friend, and so we knew his children, etc. And this is completely unexpected. He was young, healthy, in the prime of his life. One day he's fine. The next day we were meant to meet for a dinner party, and he didn't come. And we said to his wife, what's going on? And we thought that maybe they'd had an argument or something. That's why he hadn't turned up. But he wasn't feeling well. Then that sort of degraded so quickly, and he degraded so quickly. 1 week later, he's actually in hospital. He's then on a ventilator. And then everyone thought he was getting a bit better, but then he died. And it was so sad because I was actually on a business trip. I think I told you.
Yes, I remember.
And I was just so shocked. And my wife didn't really want to tell me, but she had to tell me. And it just came out of the blue. 1 minute he's there, the next minute he's not there. So that in itself is tragic. But then coming back to the point about succession planning, he was a wealthy chap, and the family had many assets, and they're still trying to unravel, what's going on with the pool of assets. And so I think the last thing you ever want is you want the rest of your family grieving, but then there's stress around what's going on with the wealth and the assets and the estate. And we see that a lot, off the back of our business. We see it all the time, and part of our technology stack and the modules that we built are focused on succession planning. So, and you must see this as well.
To be honest, one of the reasons as a client of your business, I love your business because of succession planning. I think it's all about that. For me, yes, I use it as a tool, and I use other tools, but the key that sold it to me was succession, because of how much is important for me. And I think there is, we have a podcast that can last days on succession. Sure. But the key points for me, which are important to be discussed, is generational wealth exchange. So the idea is we're going from my father kind of generation to my generation and my generation to the next one is a completely different mindset. One simple example, which I on myself, on my family, and some of the friends as well. The older generation doesn't want to be transparent with their kids. They don't want them to know exactly where and how much and which pockets. Because, the human nature is to become lazy when perhaps, there is a bit more than expected into the pockets, for example. And so one of the key of your tool, we're not selling it, but I really find it useful, is that you can create the whole map, be 100% sure that you don't go through the headache after to discover where it is what, but not to share the information today, which is one of the strengths, which some people like, the trust, which every one of us has a trusted advisor, and obviously you trust someone with giving all the information about, but it's always a risk because you rely on that one person. The world is almost a key man risk. And if you have an argument, and what about if you need to trust this person with basically the most precious things that you have. When you're not there, he needs to provide for your family with providing information, which is the key of surviving. And I've heard so many horror stories about wives not having a clue of what was worth and where, and advisor taking huge commission on disposing assets of percentages, 30-40% commission, which is basically stealing
money.
So
yes,
for me, the points are: what do you have, where do you have it, and how much is worth, how much you paid for it, and how much is worth today. Not because I want to know, okay, if the numbers be higher or lower, who cares? It's for about if I need to sell something, I need to know how much it was worth for my husband, for my wife, for anyone. So this is for me key. And to my initial point, the new generation maybe has a completely different approach. Maybe wants to be transparent, but you don't have the practical. If you speak with your wife or your kids every day about what you did, how you change your wealth, you did this and that, you spend zero quality time with them, so you don't have time. Sure. It's not about transparency, just you don't have time. So you need to have it somewhere into plan, seek legal advice. I know, I'm Italian, moved in the UK, roots are completely different. We don't have such a big hit in transferring wealth in terms of succession, because in Italy the taxation is very, very low, so no one really put that, because we're looking at 4% above 1 million, so no one really looks at it. But here is a much bigger number, so you need to understand what is best. Sure. I discover legal things that I didn't know. So first of all is get trained, understand.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, the taxation is one of those factors, isn't it? I think you need to take that into account. But you can't even start looking at that type of thing if you don't know what that digital treasure map looks like. And we sometimes call it a treasure map because it's your treasure. What have you actually brought together over your lifetime? And then it's not even just the assets, it's the legacy as well. So what we find with a lot of our family office clients, so they've created wealth, but they actually want to have this memory of the legacy that they've created and what good are they going to do with it. And again, all of that can be assigned, and it needs to be assigned through some sort of tool. And that's exactly why we built what we have. But, it's I think you touched on a really good point with the generational angle, because you've got the patriarch or the matriarch, they're very non-transparent for the most part, but then you've got this sort of almost push-pull factor going on with the next gens or the rising gens saying, well, hang on, we don't want to inherit a bunch of spreadsheets, we don't want to inherit filing cabinets strewn across the world, and we don't want a digital Dropbox, for example, some vault, which is not connected to the assets. Because I think one of the biggest difficulties is that with all of the investments that you have reams and reams of legal documentation. So where are the title deeds? Where are the policies? Where are the rental agreements? And no one knows if anything happens. And I think that's really what it's about, bringing everything together and making it organized.
And it's a double factor because, for example, by keeping your everything in one place, a safe place, and linking the assets to the document, because I'm not as organized, like, I buy something, I don't know where is the certificate of that something. And so if I have a digital copy which is linked to the valuation and the details and the managers in one place, there's a sweet spot because it says my utilization on a day by day, and in case of succession, it will be very easy to find. One other thing I do personally, which, makes me think in a bit of a less sad way of in terms of succession, is to record videos of myself when I have time.
Yes.
Of try to get to whatever would be my next generation for my family. What did I do in this particular period for that particular assets? For example, what did we do with the real estate portfolio through COVID? Which advisor did I follow if I did work with any? How did we face it in terms of even personally, in terms of harmony in the family and what together decision we did take? And I think I suggest this because it's when your son, your daughter will look at this video, it will be a very nice memory, and is you still going to pass it through in a very different way. It's just not about just the informations.
Yeah, and that's a really important point, I feel, because we wanted that video capability on the platform whereby you can have a story which is told by any relative, and those are the life lessons that you want your children to actually pick up on. What decisions did you make from an investment standpoint, but also what's the objective behind what you're building up? How do you want it to be used, and what's your view on impact? And you can put that into that video or that voice note. And I've started doing the same thing with my mum, and my mum has started to put together. Whenever I see her, I probably drive her a bit mad now. I say, listen, record a quick video and tell us, what happened in terms of this part of your life. And everyone's got that story and those life lessons that you want to pass down to that next generation. So I think that's really important. And then one other point I've encountered recently, and this is, I think, where people are beginning to think more progressively, which is what you've been really good at. You came at this when I remember first showing you the platform, and you immediately got it and thought, well, hang on, I need to put this in place now. And I wish more people did that because it's so important. And, not from the standpoint of our business, but it's part and parcel of life, as we said. And what we're finding is people are realizing that they need to do something. And so we had a recent example. So very wealthy couple, and they wanted to have some way of storing their assets on a digital platform because they have a plan of who they want to bequeath these assets to, but they're many people. And so clearly they have a will, they have trust documents, etc. So what they said was that we don't have any way of actually showing this, digitally, and that's what we want. And they're not actually, they're not next gens. They're a bit more mature, but they've recognized the power of having this digital representation. So we work with a law firm, and we work with a law firm such that all of the assets are mapped on our platform. And then in the event of incapacity or death, then the law firm has access to the platform. And I think that is really the model that's going to continue. We're seeing more and more of that, where people are realizing they need to capture this. So, yeah, and it amazes me that people don't pick up on succession more than they do currently. But I think it's beginning to change.
I think, you don't have to be super rich to think about succession. That is the only thing.
I agree.
You don't have to be billionaire, multimillionaire. Even your, stuff that you care about, and you want to give very clear indications of what you want your families to do with those things. What you really care about is not just what they think that you care about. You can tell with a clear plan what you want, do Do you care about your furnitures? Try to keep them. Or you don't care about your house, just sell it and buy a new one for you. I don't. Everyone is a very personal touch. For example, you don't have to be very, very rich or rich at all.
I completely agree, and I think that's actually one of the problems, because people think, it's only for the rich, and that's not true at all, as you've just said. And I think it's also about the granularity of allocating these assets as well, which is really important. So I know that you've got one child, you're about to have another child, and so as your family grows, you're going to have this point about who do you allocate certain assets to. And I think this is a really smart thing to think about, and we've been talking to people. So for example, if you've got a portfolio which is comprises of liquid investments, and then you've got, i.e., equities, bonds, whatever, and then you've got real estate, you might have a son or daughter that has no interest in real estate. They don't want that because they might even be living abroad. Off the back of that, you should intelligently allocate the portfolio. Give the daughter more on the cash side, on the liquid side, and then allocate more on the real estate side to your son, who's living in the country, who wants to deal with it. So actually having that granular approach, I think, is really important. But then also explaining it through a video message and saying, look, this is actually why I made that decision.
Absolutely.
I think that's really powerful.
And if you made that decision, it would be much easier once they what you will hate is having your family to fight over
right.
assets.
Yeah.
And which is, to me, is very sad. I if I imagine that, even with my sister, I have one sister, I don't want to even think about fighting. But that's why I would like from my family clarity on what is what. I don't want to negotiate. I will win the negotiation anyhow with my sister. The idea is you don't want to be put in that situation. You want other people, in these cases, to decide for you, and you will accept that.
It needs to be exactly. The more binary it is, the better. It should be complete clarity that's provided. And I see, some terrible stories, and I've seen some terrible events unfolding whereby you've got family members which got on really well prior to that event happening, and then the parent passes away. It's just fighting, and then that whole relationship is gone forever. And why on earth would you want that? That's not why you built this portfolio up or the wealth up and your legacy. It wasn't to actually have this infighting. So we see that a lot, and I think that's actually what you want to avoid. And I think that almost the approach should be sometimes talking about it openly like we are doing now. And it's almost a bit of not a shock tactic, but it's a reality check on what is going to happen. And why not protect yourself against that?
And I think the key is over the small things. Like the big things is quite often. It's got two houses, the two kids, one each, fine. But what about the small things? That's why the platform is useful, because even the watches, the rings, whatever it is, very well assignable at least. So getting it. I'm not saying you can do it on a spreadsheet. You can do it in the system. Is much easier, and safer. But the idea is do it.
The fact which we all hear about, and it's a crazy number. It's trillions of pounds of wealth which is going to transition from one generation to another. That's unfolding over the next few years. And again, you would have thought that would actually promote people to do something. But even that is, taking its time. And I think part of our job, certainly from our company's perspective, is to educate and actually point out what can go wrong and what probably will go wrong if you don't actually put the right processes in place. And even if you don't use a tech platform to do it, whatever you do something and really think about it, because the consequences will be long-standing. And that's what you want to really remember.
It's all about protecting your family in the end.
Yeah.
Right? And you,
exactly.
by mapping and assigning a value, they can take it wrong, but at least they know where things are, know how should be treated. And you have a list of contact to help out, which is your trusted advisors, for example.
Yeah.
Which they may or may not know.
And then also it's, you've made a good point there, because I think it's the trusted advisors that have a great relationship with the current wealth owner. And this is another really important point, I feel, because I've been asking people who are next gens and rising gens even. And so for the most part, they have no relationship with that trusted advisor, which I think is a huge problem. Coming back to, what could happen with that trusted advisor? Maybe something happens to that individual, which could be a disaster. But secondly, there's no transparency because there's no relationship. So I think that's even more important, whereby you've got to have some tool which actually maybe forges that link between the trusted advisor and the children or the next gens or the rising gens. And that's how you bring everyone together. And I think the smart, trusted advisors are beginning to realize that. And we've indeed been in dialogue with one, and we'd love to introduce him on a future podcast.
Absolutely.
And we'd love to hear from him on his story about why he feels that this organization needs to be there for family.
I think you nailed the right point. I think the older generation, I'm generically speaking, will have even too much confidence in advisors. Like they rely 100% relationship going on forever. But the new generation almost wants to do everything by themselves, because they always did this dichotomy between advisors and fathers, fathers and mothers doing something completely old-fashioned, and you want to be completely new. The right balance, and in any case, mitigate that through a platform is the key.
Yeah,
and I think it's very important.
Let's pick this topic up again with a trusted advisor of yours, let's look forward to that and future sessions.
Absolutely. Goodbye.
Thanks, Andrea. Bye.
Thank you, Bobby.